going to add on an additional component to our React navbar, which we created in the last video. So just as a reminder, we've got our navbar here. It's fully responsive. So this is the mobile menu view. And if I click into here, we can see we've got our link items or nav link items. It's all looking quite nice. And then closing off. And if I make this full screen here, we can see we then can show all of the nav menu items sort of on full view desktop. And then, as I said, as we go into mobile, we get the hamburger menu. So all of that was just contained in this navbar.js and CSS file. So what I've done is I've actually just taken a new branch called horizontal scroll bar, and that's what I'm going to show you how we can create that today. So if you're sort of not aware, horizontal scroll bar, I have an example here from HubSpot. So this is about horizontal scrolling, and it's quite a long article, if you can see here. So as I start to scroll down, you'll see that a scroll bar comes from the top left-hand side, just below the nav bar, and goes all the way across to the right as we scroll. And it's really quite cool because we can now, as a user, work out exactly where we are in the document, sort of how far down we have sort of gone on this blog post, for example, based on this progress bar here. So obviously sometimes I think you might be able to sort of disable this scroll bar. So if you're certainly doing that, it would be good to have the top one. But yeah, it's just nice to, you can sort of see where you are in the web page, particularly if it's a really long web page and there's lots of content to go through. So you can see we're approaching the bottom now, and when we get to the bottom, it will be sort of fully across. So the width here is 100% of the window. So yeah, so that's what we're going to implement on this site here. So there's a couple of things we're going to need to do first. So we just need to go into our into our navbar.css, and we're going to need to create that, and just the nav class, we're going to give it a position of sticky, a top of 0 and a left of 0, and I think that will just stick it to the top left. And then in our app.js, we want to create a couple of divs here. So we're not only going to be returning the navbar, we're also going to be returning a couple of other elements. And to do that, we, as you can see here, open up our return statement with some parentheses. I'm going to put a div here with a class of page, and I'm using the emmet here, so I'm just doing .page, hit enter, and we've got this. I'm going to wrap everything around the page, and then actually below the navbar, let's go back. Below the navbar here, I'm going to create a div with a progress underscore wrapper, and then inside that div, a div with a progress underscore bar, and hit enter. And I don't know why that's meant to be wrapper, like so. So you can see this is the structure that we're going to need, and really it's only these two divs where we'll be inserting the progress bar, the horizontal scroll bar, but we need the page here because in app.css we want to grab that page, so .page, and just give the whole page a height of, let's say, 500 view height. And if I click save here, we can see now we should be able to see there'll be a long scroll, and we don't have it up and running yet, so I need to restart the server here. So npm run start. And as I said, this repo will be in the description below if you just want to get straight to the code. It's on the horizontal scroll bar branch of create React app navbar -YouTube or YT, sorry, in this instance. So I think my plan is to sort of keep building upon this app and sort of add in little features and components which I've come across over sort of the last 12 months whilst learning React. So we'll just wait for that to reload here. So you can see we're starting the development server, and we should have a page with a height of 500 view height. So it's going to be a nice long page for us to scroll down. So that's just re-rendering. Let's see. There we go, and we can see there's our page, and we can see now our navbar is also stuck to the top, so it's position sticky. So no matter how far we scroll down the page, we still get our mobile menu showing, and obviously the content behind it would just be, as I said, well, behind the mobile nav here. Same for desktop as well, so there's no change there. Okay, so In app.js, as I said, we've created a progress wrapper and a progress bar, and that's actually all the JSX or the HTML, I guess, that we need for this. I'm going to close off navbar CSS, and we're going to work from app.css for now. So we want to target that progress wrapper, like so, and we're going to give it a couple of properties. So position will be fixed, like so, a top of 0, left of 0, and a width of 100%. Okay, cool. And then the progress underscore bar will be position of absolute, so that's within the progress wrapper. Top 0, left 0, it's just sort of convention, I guess, to do top left. Many want things like that, but yeah, feel free to play around with where it actually sits on the page. So with the width, I'm going to set that to 0px, but you'll see once we include some JavaScript, that's actually the value that will be changing on this progress bar, and I'll just show you that once I've got the rest of the values CSS-wise sorted. So we just want a height, let's say 5 pixels. You can change this, of course, and the background color. And let's give it a color of blue for now. So if I hit save, we're going to see we actually don't see anything on the page. What we want to do is toggle this width value. So let's do 50 pixels, and we can see we've got our progress bar that's 50 pixels across here on the very top left. If I change that to percentage, I think that's what we'll be using in the JavaScript. We can see we're now 50% across the width of the page. And that's our progress bar. So what we could do is give it a top of 50 pixels, like so, because we have the nav bar that's 50 pixels. And you can see if I scroll down, both of those are still in view, and the content, let's say below, if it was a long blog post, would be behind that. So that's quite cool. So let's see. Yeah, so all of our CSS is actually done here, I think, for this. What we would need to do in our app.js now is create a couple of variables, and we're going to be toggling the progress bar width using the percentage that we're going to calculate. So essentially, when we're 50% down the page here, it will be at 50% width. When we're at the very top, it will be 0, and of course at the very bottom will be 100%. So yeah, so how do we do that? So we need to create a function. So I'm going to call it const on scroll, and it will be an arrow function, and this is inside our app function itself over here. And we're going to create a number of different values, but essentially all we're doing is we're trying to get the percentage that the user has scrolled down the page. So there's a few different things that we're going to need. So let's just start with that. So we'll do pixels from top. And we just want to calculate how many pixels from the top the user currently is. So sorry, there'll be a few errors as we go along. I'm just going to do window.scroll y, which is the obviously y axis, so top and bottom. And if I inspect here, let's just see, there we've got our console, and I'm going to put a console log, it's going a bit slow, console.log pixels from top. If I hit enter, Command S to save, it's just running the prettier code formatter, so it's a bit slow. I think the internet's a bit slow for me today, but we can see here, as I start to scroll down in the console, we should see our pixels from top value display. And we're not, because our function's not been fired. So actually what we need to do is add in a use effect, and if you know React, you'll be quite familiar with use effects. It's quite a popular hook. So we just open this up, and we want a window.add event listener, and we want to listen for the scroll event. Right, and when we hear the scroll event, we want to fire the onScroll function, like so. And now, if I hit save and make sure everything's going, we can see our function onScroll is now sort of highlighted, that means it should have been invoked. And we can see now how many pixels we are from the top of the page. And you can see that goes all the way down to 3071 and all the way back up to 0. So that's quite cool. With useEffect, you generally want to sort of return or sort of clean out the function, I think. So I'm just going to return an empty arrow function with window.remove event listener, and that will be the scroll. Scroll event, and again we'll pass in our on scroll function. So that's removing the event. Yeah, sort of a cleanup function, I believe it's called. So yeah, that's all we need for that. And obviously you need to import it from React. You might also see it if you've got React already imported like this, but yeah, just import useEffect from React and then we'll be able to use that here. But you can see now we're getting the pixels from the top based on the window, which is this thing here, so the visible window that we can see, scroll Y. So that's the Y axis. Cool, so next we want to know the document height. So we want to actually know the whole height of this document here. And document basically being the whole web page. So document height, and we'll set that to document.body.client height. And obviously this changes based on how much content you've got on the page. But if I grab this value now and pop it in our console.log, obviously when we scroll, the function will fire, but you'll see when I can do that, it is actually a static value. So let me just hit save. Are we still getting it seems we're getting the pixels from top as well. Let me just comment out this cleanup function, and no, we're still getting it. But what you can see anyway is at the bottom here is this big value, and that is the document height. So that is the height of the document, sort of the whole thing here. And that's what we will need to calculate sort of how far we need that value to work out then how far down that whole page we are, so the document height. So then we want to know the window height, which if the document height is the whole page, so everything from the top all the way down to the bottom, we want to know how sort of tall, or the height of from the top of here to the bottom of just the visible window. So we'll do it, let window height, and that will be equal to window.inner height, like so, and that's inner height, like that. And let me just update this function, and sorry, the console.log, and we should now see at the bottom our window height. I think I need to actually refresh this browser, so let's just do that, and then we should only see one figure for each time we scroll. There we are. So here's the window height. So basically from the top of here where my mouse is now to the bottom is 764 pixels. And if you remember the whole document, so everything that I'm scrolling up through now, it's just over 3000. So we want to then calculate the difference between those two, because we want to know how far the user has scrolled down the page based on where they are, right? So we're going to do let difference equal document height minus window height, like that. And then if I log the difference here, we can see we've got, when it just reloads, and I'll probably need to refresh the browser again. So there we go. I think that's all done. So we can see the difference actually is also a static value. So it's the difference between, obviously, yeah, sorry, the document height and the window height. So this is actually the value that we want to then calculate how far at the top or the bottom the user is, because we're basically taking into account this whole screen, right? And that's not being included in the calculation that we're going to make next. So that calculation is percentage. So percentage would equal to, let's do 100 times pixels from top. So that's how many pixels they are from top times 100. And then we divide that by the difference. And what's that's going to give us is a percentage of how far the user has scrolled down the page, basically. And if I pop that in our console.log, we can now see there'll be a value going from 0 to 100 effectively. So let's just see. Sorry, it's been a little bit slow. I think everything's sort of compiling. We've lost our navbar, but it should all come to render in a second. Let me just hit save again. Bring that over so we have everything. And let's refresh our browser window. There we go. Cool. So we've got our navbar, and if I start to scroll down, we can see it's logging out these values here. So it's to quite a few number of decimal places. That's fine, we can work with that because we're only really interested in the value itself. We don't worry about cleaning it up. But as you can see, as I'm scrolling down to the bottom, we've now got 100%, and at the very bottom, I'm scrolling back up, we get back to 0. So that's why we need to calculate the difference between the document height and window height to take into account the window where they are. So this is literally 0, and at the very bottom is 100. You see? So what we want to do now is we'll do a document dot get, actually we'll do a query selector, and we want to target the progress underscore bar, and I haven't used query selector for a little while, so I think that's right in targeting a class, and we want to target the style, style dot width. So let's just get back to that, style dot width, and we're going to set that to, and now we want to use a sort of template literal string, or these backticks basically, and we put in a $sign and then curly braces, and you can see that changes to blue syntactically, or sorry, the sort of the syntax highlighting, and we can pop in our percentage because it's the JavaScript variable that we're able to put in here now. And just one thing to note is after that percentage, you'll want to add a percentage symbol because we want it to be the width to be a percentage going from obviously 0 to 100 and using all of these values in between. Okay, and if I just check everything's looking good and hit save, and if we go back to our app.css, we will want to give this an initial width of 0. So just remember to move the 50 or whatever we set it to before. Yeah, you don't want it to start sort of halfway across the page and then it might jump back and go back and forth. But yeah, I'm going to sort of uncomment out our cleanup function. I think that is required. I'm just going to hit save, make sure everything's going nicely, and let's see. So I think our query selector is wrong. Let me do, is it get element by class name? And I think it would then just be, we need to provide the class name, which was progress bar. And let's just see if that is all okay. Let's see. No. So I'm trying to work out why that is. Is it get element? Let's have a look. So just refreshing that. And do we still have an error? We do. Let me just refresh the browser just so it's up to date with all the changes we've made. And let's see now. Yeah. Okay. Get element by class name syntax. So it's been a while since I've used this, as I said. Let's just see exactly what it requires to target that progress bar class name here. It's just the names. There's a string, so I wonder if it is a string, if we can just take off these. I wouldn't have thought so, but let's try that. Let's go back to our app, and yeah, obviously no, that's not allowed. Let me just use an ID because I know that will work, and I'll just give it here an ID of, let's say, bar, and give this div an ID of bar as well. And we want to get element by ID, like so. There we go. I can see the style has sort of changed syntax wise and sort of highlighting, so I think that's caught it now. I'll just refresh the browser here and we should be able to see everything looking good, which it seems to be. So I'm going to bring this over just a little bit and we can see as we scroll down the page now, we can see our progress bars coming across. And actually if I close this off, we can see it in better view. So you can see as I'm going up and down, it's re-rendering this use effect, which is firing on scroll. So it's listening for the scroll event, and every time it hears it, it on scroll is fired, and that's our whole function here. And obviously at the very bottom, we're changing this progress bar ID style.width, and that is the percentage. So sorry, if I open this up, we can see there's the percentage. And you can see now as we're scrolling down, we're sort of about halfway, which is cool, and then we go all the way to the bottom and we hit the end, and that's at 100% at that point. And obviously scrolling back up does the same. So as I said, it's quite a nice effect to sort of let your user of your website know whereabouts they are on the page, and particularly for sort of blog posts or long form content. It's really nice little feature, and it's sort of unexpected as well, right? Because you're at the top of the page. It just looks normal, you've got your working nav as before, but as you start to scroll down, there's the progress bar. It's quite intuitive as what it's doing as well. And obviously app.css, that progress bar, you can change the height and the color. So let's say if we made this 10 pixels, it will be a lot thicker, or twice as thick. And yeah, so that's quite a nice little feature. I think for, as I said, for blogs and other long form content. Going forward, I think I'll be adding to this app with other little components that I've made. As I said, having learned React over the last year or so. But yeah, let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to cover in the comments below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you.